This is the Southwest Outdoors Report, powered by your Texas Chevy dealer.
Hi everybody, and welcome into this week's episode. Earlier in the season, I had the dubious distinction of having to bring you some bad news on a couple of lakes in our region, from the gigantic redfish kill down at Lake Fairfield all the way to the shad kill and subsequent striper situation up at Lake Texoma. Well, on today's show, I actually have some good news for you on a big comeback in a lake in our region, one of the hottest fishing lakes around. I'd like to welcome you into beautiful Lake Ray Roberts. Ray Roberts is located between Sanger and Pilot Point, Texas, just south of Gainesville, Texas, east of Interstate 35. It has got catfish, largemouth bass, crappie, white bass, and brim, very plentiful in the lake. And this lake has undergone a metamorphosis, and we'll talk about that on today's episode. And while I'm out in the NITROS Z8 investigating Ray Roberts, you are going with our reporters around the region for your very latest fishing reports. Brian Hughes, Bill Olson, Cajun Phil and Kevin, Gary Dallahan, and much more. Also this week on the LOWRANCE Hot Lake of the Week, I'll be showing you one of my favorite and best all-around fishing lakes in the state of Oklahoma. On Barry's Reel Fishing, we'll talk about a specific time of day that's key for catching white bass. And a little bit later on the Big Catch of the Week photo, we'll show you a giant largemouth bass from a little-known lake in central Texas. But wait, first, Heather is standing by back at the FSN studios with all the information you'll need for your upcoming weekend fishing trip on the Chevy Weekend Planner.
A check of the Saloon-R tables indicates that the best times for fishing this weekend will be starting right before sunrise and again around sunset. Peak evening hours will begin at 5 p.m. on Saturday and at 5:40 on Sunday. Look for the sun to rise at 6:56 a.m. and set at 5:27 p.m. Your evenings will feature a first quarter moon. Have a great weekend, everybody. Now back to Barry.
Thanks very much, Heather. We're out on Ray Roberts right now, and as always, we've got a very, very windy day today. Right now, I'm kind of back out of it in one of the major arms. In a minute, we're going out in the wind and try to catch a couple of white bass. The lake's red hot for white bass the last couple of weeks. But first, I want to show you one thing that Lake Ray Roberts is famous for. Before the lake was built, the Corps of Engineers pushed up some giant brush piles, put steel cables across those, and anchored them to the floor of the lake. Those are fish attractors, and they hold tons of crappie. So I want to show you what one of those looks like. I'm going to drive over it right now with the LOWRANCE HDS10. Now I've got the screen split right now with the traditional 2D sonar on the left and the structure scan on the right. You can see there's the brush pile right there coming into view. Here you can actually see the little strands of brush. You can see bait fish hanging off the edges of it. The crappie should be holding right around that brush. So I'm going to take a marker buoy, throw it right back there on the brush pile, circle back around, hold into that wind, get my crappie pole out, see if we can catch a couple. Stay with us. When we come back, Brian Hughes has your Texas fishing and lake reports for freshwater, and Bill Olson is down on the Texas Gulf Coast.
This is the Southwest Outdoors Report, powered by your Texas Chevy dealer.
There's one. Come aboard, buddy. All right. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Now we've got the crappie working. This is your Southwest Outdoors Report. And we're out on Lake Ray Roberts today. And I mentioned earlier, I showed you the brush piles. These are Corps of Engineers man-made brush piles that they pushed up with giant dozers cabled down to the bottom of the lake. They're marked on paper maps. You go get a paper map, you can find the locations of many of these brush piles around the lake. What I like to do is throw out two markers. These brush piles are oblong and they're about the size of a school bus, most of them. So you can see I've got one buoy here and then one right back here. And they're about 20 yards apart, something like that. So that way it gives me the ends marked. I can pull up here and fish them. I'm fishing them with a little Bobby Garland crappie jig. That one is called a slab slayer, and I put it on a big heavy Moglow head, and I drop it straight down and fish it vertically. And that's always the best way to fish a brush pile, is get straight up and down over it, drop it straight down in the brush so you don't get snagged, and jig it real easy. Lots of crappie can be caught that way at Lake Ray Roberts. In a little while, we're going white bass fishing, but right now, here's Brian Hughes in Texas.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's Lone Star Lakes, brought to you by Brass and Blades, the bait with twice the bite. Now we're going to visit a couple of our record-setting lakes, starting in the Texas Panhandle with Lake Meredith, which holds our smallmouth bass record. I'm getting a lot of reports of numbers being caught on Meredith on quarter-ounce hair jigs in brown and green with real pork trailers. Also, small-bodied, deep-diving crankbaits in crawfish colors. Now you can also try walleye while you're at Meredith with bottom-bouncing rigs and spoons tipped with minnows. Our other record-setting lake, Lake Fork. You'll find bass on the grass. Use a bladed jig, in this case, jigging brass, to catch those fish. What you'll do is find a grass bed, 6 to 12 feet of water. Fish the outsides with the bladed jig in a swimming pattern and catch those active fish. Now, once you see a difference in the grass bed, whether it's a hole, a cut, a place where a laydown is, or where timber joins the grass, kill that bait. Let it flutter down like a jig, and you might catch the next state record here in Texas. That's this week's Lone Star Lakes, brought to you by Brass and Blades. Now let's check in with Mr. Bill Olson. He's on the coast.
Hi folks, this week's report is brought to you by Killer Tackle by TTF, producers of great products like the Stingmate Stingray Sting First Aid Kit, their Jellyfish Sting Relief Gel, and killer lineup of soft plastics. They're all available at better tackle retailers or from the website on the screen. Well, this weekend we'll see air temperatures moderate as well as water temperatures warm. Now the pattern speckled trout are on is to make a move toward mudshell bottom with even deeper water nearby. Look for trout to move shallow to feed when conditions warm and to slip to slightly deeper water when the temperatures drop. This is particularly true on the middle coast. When north winds blow and tides drop as they did after the last front, look for birds to be working over feeding fish. This will remain a constant pattern along the upper coast for the next several weeks from Sabine southward to West Matagorda. Now when tides drop, the mouths of Back Lake drains in behind Matagorda Peninsula and Matagorda Island, San Jose and Mustang Islands, and North Padre Island are all good options. As temperatures drop on the lower coast, look for fish to seek the sanctuary of the Intercoastal Waterway or other deep holes and channels. This weekend, Saturday has a single tide schedule of 1 high and 1 low tide. Sunday's a 3-tide day with 2 low tides and just 1 high. I'm Bill Olson, and I'll see you on the coast.
There's one. That's a good crappie. Looky here, ladies and gentlemen. All right, there's a slab right there. Well, we're still out here and running from the wind today. The wind is building and building and building, and still out here on the Corps of Engineers brush pile catching a few crappie. I could catch a whole bunch. I want to show you something right behind us. Past that point, if we zoom in, you can see those huge waves out there. I'll tell you how crazy I am. I saw a bunch of birds diving out there. I think there's a big school of white bass out in open water. I'm going to go out there and give it a try. So hitch up. Here we go. When we come back, I'm going to have your Oklahoma Fishing and Lake Reports with Gary Dollahan, and I'm going to be out in the big waves, see if we can find a couple of white bass.
The Southwest Outdoors Report, powered by your Texas Chevy dealers, is brought to you by Nitro Performance Bass Boats. Fish your best in a Nitro. By Strand, the standard of dependability. By Costa Sunglasses, see what's out there. And by Motor Guide, never stop.
Hey, welcome back everybody. You're on your Southwest Outdoors Report, rolling out in the wind today at Lake Ray Roberts between Sanger and Pilot Point, Texas. As you can see, we've moved out to the open part of the lake, out in the wind. We've got 20, 25 mile an hour winds today, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay out here, but I gotta show you something. Right over here off the bow of the boat, we have got tons of white seagulls diving at the water. What they're eating are the little shad that are being pushed up by the white bass underneath. So I'm going to put a cast out there right underneath those birds and see if I can catch one right out from under them going downwind here with huge waves coming over the back of the boat. Oh, and I got him right under the birds. These are some of the biggest waves that I have ever been out in the middle of and fished in. That's a good white bass right there. All right, well, there are white bass everywhere out here, and if we could catch a day with no wind, you could kill them out here. And the reports on the Texas Fishing Forum are saying that 100 white bass days out here are very common right now. So get you a spoon, get you a tail spinner, maybe even a lipless rattling crankbait, and you can kill them out here. Catch a day when there's not much wind. And the key is to fish near Wolf Island, a little bit south of Wolf Island. But we've got 4 and 5 foot swells out here right now, so I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to stay out here. All right, let's go north, check in up in Oklahoma. All the fishing reports up there. Here's Gary Dollahan.
With it being the second week of November, there's still some amazing weather and fishing going on in the state of Oklahoma right now. We have 2 areas reporting excellent trout fishing. One of those is the lower Illinois River below the Lake 10 Killer Dam. There's some dry fly surface activity going on, as well as catching those fish on spinners and super dupers. The other trout area is the Blue River. Again, spinners and super dupers seem to be catching the majority of the fish. Make sure you know those trout regulations for the state. As far as our lake fishing right now, if the fishing is good for one species, it seems to be good for everything right now. And again, it's Fort Gibson, Hudson, Grand, Uchi, Greenleaf, and Weber's Falls reporting good bass fishing, white bass fishing, crappie, and catfish. For bass fishing right now, use topwater or near the surface baits like buzz baits and spinner baits. For the crappie, the magical depth seems to be 12 to 15 feet, either along the ledges or in brush piles. One thing you want to pay attention to right now are the creek channels, because those fish use those like highways. Look for areas that those creek channels come up close to something, whether it's boathouses, a bluff, or points. Those areas give the fishermen a chance to fish a variety of depths and with different lures to find out where those fish might be. One thing about them, you can't catch them if you don't go.
This week on the LOWRANCE Hot Lake of the Week, I've got one of the best fishing lakes in the entire state of Oklahoma. It's one of Gary Dollahan's favorites, one of Doc Geiger's favorites, and one of mine. It's Fort Gibson Reservoir near Muskogee, Oklahoma. Let's locate it for you now on the LOWRANCE HDS-10. The lake is north of Muskogee and east of Tahlequah, Oklahoma. We switch now to the Navionics Hot Maps Platinum chart for all the detail. We've got the satellite overlay photo option enabled so you can see what's on shore in the Navionics software. Now we show you one area at mid-lake for orientation purposes. Here's the State Highway 51 bridge crossing here. Now we zoom in north of the bridge where North Bay and Long Bay intersect with the main lake. There are some good white bass hotspots on the main lake points and some underwater humps like these. You want to hop a slab or a spoon off the bottom at about 15 to 20 feet of water. Then if you want to fish for bass, look for some good boat docks to pitch and flip on this shoreline that I have circled, and also up the main arm of North Bay indicated here by the arrow. Fort Gibson is good for crappie, bass, catfish, and white bass. It's a great all-around fishery near Muskogee. That's this week's LOWRANCE Hot Lake of the Week. Stay with us. Cajun Phil and Kevin are waiting in the wings from Louisiana.
The Southwest Outdoors Report, powered by your Texas Chevy dealers, is brought to you by quality award-winning Tracker boats. Fish the finest. By LOWRANCE, makers of the HDS, high-definition systems. And by Jean LaRue Lures and Bobby Garland Baits, quality soft plastic baits made in Oklahoma with American pride.